I didn't hear the bullet that killed my son. I only saw the echo in my wife's eyes, frozen wide across a flickering screen. She was on a Zoom call with me, April 12th, 2:36 p.m. She had just turned the laptop toward the backyard so I could see the birthday banner we'd put up for Jamie's 10th. She was laughing. Then she screamed. The screen went black. My name is David Keller. I'm 51 years old. I used to be a structural engineer in Cincinnati. Steel frameworks, tension distribution, load-bearing design. I was the guy they called when things had to hold, when collapse wasn't an option. But I couldn't hold my family together. 3 years ago my son was shot and killed during a drive-by. Wrong place, wrong time, they said. The case was open shut. Supposed gang retaliation, just another tragic accident. The shooter, 19-year-old Devin Lamar. He was out in less than 16 months. The bullet didn't just kill Jamie, it obliterated everything. My wife Carol's laughter, the cadence of morning routines, the soft click of Lego bricks in the hallway. I've replayed that Zoom call over 100 times, every goddamn flicker, every frozen frame. And yet the real freeze came after time stopped, clarity decayed, and in its place obsession. I started going to the courthouse, not for Devin. He was already out. I went to understand how something so irreparable could be treated like paperwork. I watched cases, studied prosecutor, memorized names. One of them stood out, Adia Michelle Torres. She had prosecuted Devin. Her closing argument was a formality, barely 5 minutes. I pulled the court transcripts, watched the grainy footage. Her voice was bored. She called my son the child in question. That phrase bled into my ears like acid. At night I dreamed of tension cables snapping, bridges collapsing under invisible weight. My therapist called it projective grief, displacement. I called it architecture. Carol left me 6 months after the sentencing. She said I wasn't here. But where the fuck was I supposed to be? I started following Devin. He had a job at a tire shop, lived with his cousin, posted gym selfies with grind mode captions. He had a life, muscles, friends. Jamie had bones in the dirt. I never spoke to Devin. Not at first. I needed something deeper than confrontation. I needed anatomy, the nerves of his world. I wanted to disassemble him, like an old bridge under inspection. The first crack came through Devin's cousin Raven, mid-level dealer. Slopped. I watched him for weeks, mapped his movements, traced his burner numbers. He had a pattern. Wednesdays he dropped at the corner of Maple and 9th. I left a USB drive in his car. It had spyware I bought off a darknet forum. I told myself it was research. Closure. A word I never truly believed. That drive opened the door. Raven wasn't just moving weed. There were photos, files, conversations. Devin laughing about Jamie. Little white boy caught it like a movie scene lol. I printed that text. I burned it into the walls of my skull. It changed everything. It wasn't an accident. Jamie wasn't random. Here is the part I don't talk about. The part where I crossed a line and didn't feel it under my feet. I didn't go to the police. I didn't confront Devin or Raven. I bought a gun off one of Raven's buyers. No serial. Cold metal, 38 with a worn grip. And a smell I'll never forget. Grease, steel and some kind of rot. But I didn't use it. Instead I used fear. I sent Devin screenshots, anonymous numbers, phrases that mirrored his own. You caught one like a movie scene. I watched him unravel, miss shifts, delete, socials, argue in alleys. I became a ghost inside his veins. I thought maybe it would end there. It didn't. Devin disappeared. Just gone. No trace, no chatter from Raven, no police bulletin, no body, just silence. That's when the second bullet landed. It wasn't a literal shot. It was a knock. 2 detectives. Missing persons unit. Mr. Keller, can we talk? They asked questions. Showed me footage. Grainy. Half-lit. Devin walking near my building. They knew. Or suspected. And suddenly I realized. This wasn't about Jamie anymore. It was about me. I broke. Not externally. I smiled. Nodded. Gave them tea. But inside my body buckled like rebar in fire. Because here's the twist. Devin didn't kill Jamie.
Not alone. The spyware showed one more thing. Days after Devon vanished, a video file I almost deleted. Raven, sitting with Torres, the prosecutor, same cafe, twice, 15 minutes. Exchange of something I couldn't see what, but the timestamp matched the day. Devon disappeared. That phrase returned. The child in question. My son wasn't a mistake. He was a message. I spiraled. I revisited every file, cross-referenced court dates. Torres had dropped other charges, cases connected to Raven's crew. She wasn't lazy. She was laundering justice. For favors, for pay. And Jamie was caught in the tide. I waited outside her townhouse. Rain made the night blur. I watched her drink wine alone. Sleek apartment. Clean lines. No guilt. I wanted to kill her. I didn't. I sent her a copy of the video. 3 days later she resigned. 2 weeks after that, her name was redacted from several case records. Internal affairs. Buried. Devon's body was never found. Carol never answered my calls again. I don't sleep anymore. I listen. For the sound of bones moving under soil. For Jamie's voice. For the tension in the steel of my own skull. Was it revenge? No. Revenge is a story you tell to make pain noble. This wasn't noble. This was collapse. Complete. Irreversible. A structure once proud now rusted from the inside, carrying nothing but ghosts.
They say a structure never falls in silence. There's always a creak, a snap, a sound like breath being torn from steel. That's what I heard the night the second email arrived. No subject. No sender. Just a file titled Laminated Justice P4. I hadn't opened anything for weeks. Since Torres resigned. Since Devon vanished. Since I stopped answering my own name. But I clicked. The video wasn't of Torres. Or Devon. It was grainy footage from inside an evidence locker. Camera panning slow across rows of unclaimed boxes. Then it stopped. Box labeled Jamie Keller. Homicide non-cap. My son's case. The box was still there. That box was supposed to be destroyed 2 months ago. I'd filed the request myself. Anonymous. Forged. A loose end I tied clean. But someone found it. There are no words for the kind of cold that hits when you realize your secrets have been archived. I drove to the precinct. Didn't go in. Just watched the building breathe under fluorescent dusk. Cops coming out with coffee. Bullshit and unreadable eyes. I wanted to know who sent the file, but it wasn't a question. It was a warning. The next day my mailbox was open. Not email. My actual box. Bent at the hinge. Inside a burnt USB drive. A photo of Devon. But altered. His eyes blacked out. Sharpie strokes like lashes. And a note. You're not the only architect. The spiral returned. At night I stared at floor plans. I didn't remember drawing. Structural designs, but not for buildings. For systems, relationships, leverage points, maps of people. Torres, Raven, Devon, and now, someone else. I started sleeping in the garage, among rust and metal. Safer there. Less history, less Carol, less Jamie, but not quieter. The sounds came back. Not voices, tools. The clink of wire, the grind of bone. I couldn't tell if they were memory or omen. On April 12th, exactly 1 year to the day, my front door was spray-painted. One word. Fracture. That's when I knew someone knew everything. Not just about Devon. About me. The gun. The files. Torres. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was exposure. Systematic. Intentional, like demolition. Controlled collapse. And I felt it in my teeth. I dug through the old transcripts. Jamie's case. Torres's cases. Raven's files. That's when I found a name that hadn't mattered before. Detective Vernon Shaw, lead on Jamie's scene. Quiet. Minimal reports. Retired 6 months after. Where had I heard that name before? Buried in Torres's personnel file. He was her uncle. Not by blood. By marriage. And 2 years ago Shaw had been suspended for tampering with a domestic assault file tied to Raven's crew.
Charges never stuck. Course they didn't. Justice wasn't blind. It was busy. I tracked Shaw to a trailer park in Monroe. Beer cans, antenna dish. Quiet dog. I didn't approach, just watched, waited. At 2:12 a.m. he came out to piss in the gravel. I took the risk, slipped the USB into his car door, the burnt one, with the altered photo. Next day news broke. Retired Detective Vernon Shaw found dead. Self-inflicted gunshot wound, no foul play suspected. That was a lie. I saw the scene photos later leaked, not self-inflicted, no residue on his hands. Bullet entered from behind. Execution. Someone was cleaning up. And I wasn't on the outside anymore. I was inside the structure, inside the fracture, and it was closing. There's a switch that flips when you realize the people who buried your child are still breathing like they matter. Mine flipped the night Shaw's death hit the news. I sat in the dark, watching the pixelated footage on loop. His trailer, the yellow tape, the way the dog howled like it knew something sacred had gone wrong. But I didn't feel guilt. I felt ignition. I went back into the files, back into the spyware logs. I traced every name that touched Jamie's case, every contact linked to Torres and Shaw. That's when I found her, Danica Reyes, court stenographer. She'd been on the docket the day Torres signed off on Devon's plea deal. She was also listed in 2 sealed subpoenas that never made it to trial. Most people saw paper. I saw pattern. I followed her home. Quiet suburb, lavender mailbox, porch lights on a timer. Nothing screamed corruption. Until I broke into her garage. Old receipts, a bag of shredded documents, and under a false floor panel microcassettes. I hadn't seen one in years. I took 2. At home I played them on an old player from my office drawer. Her voice, Torres's voice. But the third one, a man. Clock him at the park. Make it clean. We'll clear it through Shaw. Jamie's name isn't mentioned, but the date matches April 10th, 2 days before. They called it clocking. That wasn't random. That wasn't gang crossfire. That was a hit. I vomited in the sink. Not because of what they said, but because a part of me had already known, had felt it. Coiled like wire. Under skin. They planned his death. Not for him. For me. I called Carol that night. First time in 6 months. She didn't answer. I sent the audio. She blocked my number. Fair. Danica disappeared the next day. No report. No media. Just gone. Someone was watching my moves, which meant it was time to stop hiding. I leaked the audio anonymously, sent it to 5 local reporters, a podcaster, and a Reddit thread disguised as conspiracy bait. 3 days later, one brave journalist, Elisa Marin, ran with it. Small article, bigger implications. Whispers of judicial tampering in 20 comment section exploded. 4 hours later, her car was broken into. Laptop gone. I read the police report. I read between the lines. This wasn't just a network. This was a syndicate. Justice wasn't the system. It was the currents, and I had just lit a fuse under their vault. I rearmed. Not with guns. With data. I wired a dead man switch. All files. Evidence. Voice memos. Spyware logs. Encrypted and set to auto-release if I didn't log in within 72 hours. I knew they'd find me. That was the point. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was bait. And bait is most powerful when it bleeds. On May 3rd, 11:46 p.m., I received a final message. Different from the rest. Clean font. Clean signature. Mr. Keller, you've made your case. We'll make ours. One last meeting. Your son's grave. May midnight. Alone. I didn't respond. I just dressed in black, loaded a flare gun, and waited. The graveyard is quieter at night than any church. Even the wind steps lighter around the dead. I arrived at 11:54 p.m., parked a block away, walked in with nothing but the flare gun, and my father's watch ticking like a countdown on my wrist. Jamie's headstone was the only white thing in a sea of grey.
and waiting next to it 2 men. Suits, unarmed or pretending to be. One was younger, mid-30s, short-cropped hair, too confident. The other, older, heavy coat, face like it had seen too many verdicts, and none of them just. I knew him. Judge Raymond Pike, the same judge who approved Devon's early release. He looked at me like he was measuring my coffin. "Keller," he said. "Sit." I didn't. "I have one question," I said. "Why?" He actually smiled. "Why? Because you're not special. None of you are." He gestured to Jamie's grave. "You think that boy mattered? He was a lever. Nothing more." The other man cut in. "Torres played her role. Shaw cleaned. Raven watched. But you," he pointed at me, "you built the fire." I stepped closer. The flare gun hung loose in my hand. "Who gave the order?" The judge sighed like I'd asked him to explain algebra to a dog. "There's no order, David. There's momentum. Devon was disposable. You were volatile. Jamie was unfortunate." He reached into his coat. "Not for a weapon, for a photo. My wife, Carol. It was dated 6 weeks ago. Her, with a man, smiling, hands on a child's shoulder. Not Jamie. Another boy, same age. She's safe now," the judge said, "because you stayed away." He tucked the photo back in. "End it here. Walk away, or we bury more children. Not hypothetically, not metaphorically, literally." That was the moment. Not when Jamie died. Not when Torres laughed. Not when Devon vanished. That threat, that tone, that systemic sneer. That's when I became a weapon. I raised the flare gun and fired it straight into the sky. Not to signal for help, to mark the place. Because my auto-release was tied to GPS. 2 minutes later, a dozen inboxes lit up with a final file dump. Locations, phone intercepts, voice prints, names. Pike, the younger man. Derek Vaughan, assistant to the Attorney General. Others. None would sleep again. Pike moved toward me. "What did you do?" I just looked at Jamie's name and whispered. "Collapsed it. They didn't shoot me. They couldn't. Too messy now." They vanished like spiders into wall cracks. But the fuse was burning. Within days, indictments leaked. 2 resignations. 1 suspicious car crash. Danica Reyes resurfaced. Witness protection. Torres, still missing. Raven's body surfaced in a swamp. Devon remained ash. And me. I stayed in the shadows of the world I broke. They called me a whistleblower, a vigilante, a father. None of it mattered, because I didn't bring Jamie back. I just made the world echo his scream. Carol never contacted me again. The boy in the photo wasn't ours. He was adopted. She built a new frame. I remained in rubble. I don't sleep. I listen. For more echoes, more tension, because I know there are other architects out there, and some structures deserve to fall, hard and loud. It came in the mail. 6 months after everything burned. A plain manila envelope. No return address. Just my name, typed in courier, like an obituary headline. Inside a flash drive, and a birth certificate. Jamie's, only it wasn't his. Not entirely. I plugged in the drive. 1 file, JSON redacted, 739.mp4. I played it. It was surveillance footage. Hospital room. Late night. A woman screaming. Monitors beeping. Nurses rushing. Then silence. Then the doctor's voice. Stillborn. But the mother didn't cry. She whispered, "Switch him. Just switch him." And then I saw her face. Carol. My lungs locked. My chest buzzed like it was full of hornets. I watched the timestamp. April 12th, 2005. Jamie's birth. Only, Jamie wasn't our son. The footage cut to another room. Another child. A nurse moving swiftly. No paperwork. No announcement. Just 1 child taken. 1 left behind. I don't remember standing. I don't remember falling. I remember the sound that came out of me, not a cry. A snarl. Everything rewound. Jamie's eyes, the way he never looked like me. Carol's evasive grief, the way she coped. I checked medical records. Jamie's blood type, mine, didn't match. I confronted Carol. She didn't deny it, just stared. He was already yours, David. You loved him more than any man ever loved anything. I don't know what hurt more, the truth of it, or the truth beneath it, that my revenge wasn't for my son. It was for a boy I was never meant to have, and somehow, that made it worse, because it meant I was the imposter, that everything I destroyed, every life I took or ruined, I did for something I believed was mine, not something that was. What is justice, when your premise is a lie? What is revenge when you're not the victim? What is a man, when you peel away what he fought for, and there's nothing underneath? They didn't break me. They didn't have to. They just let me break myself. Now I wonder. No name, no face, no legacy, just an echo, a tremor in the bones of a system I cracked. Not because I was righteous, but because I was wrong. Sometimes I see him in dreams. Jamie, or whatever his name was. He doesn't speak, just watches, eyes full of a question I'll never answer. Who were you saving? And I wake up empty, every time.